Megan, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing all right. Today's guest is Megan McGrath, who is actually the sister of longtime business partner Kate McGrath. Megan is an art teacher. Known Megan for, I guess, about 12 years now, give or take. And along with being an art teacher, Megan does a lot of amazing artwork that you've been doing for how long? I mean, you've been doing that for a while.
Yeah, like I want to say I started art when I was a 6-year old, just grandma kind of steered me in that direction. So I've been creating and drawing and painting for a long time.
Oh, that's cool. What is it about it that you enjoy so much about the artwork?
Um, for me, it's almost like a therapy, like running or something. It just, I can completely forget about everything else going on and I can just kind of focus, put on some music and I just like the physical act of creating. And then of course I always liked the mind of an artist and how like the greats, how they came to their ideas and what propelled them to do a certain thing. And most of them were a little concerning, but and struggled with a lot. But from those minds came beautiful artwork. So it just kind of really, it's just intriguing. And for me, it's just also my connection to my grandmother, and it just really makes me happy that out of all the crafts and talents one can have, I love that I can draw, you
Hmm.
know? So
So when you say a connection to your grandma, is it because she still steers you in that direction? So when you're doing it, you're kind of feeling her presence that way, or
I think so. Nana, Kate and our grandmother, she passed away, what, like 2.5, 3 years ago, maybe. And
Mhm.
she was really the first art teacher I ever had. And like I said, I remember doing it when I was very little. She showed me portraits. That was the first thing. So I was drawing portraits maybe at 5 years, 6 years old, and walking over her, and she would correct me or show me proportions. And she would say everything is in relation to something else. And she taught me shading. So I was doing this stuff really young. And, everyone, as an art teacher now, it's like people associate whether or not you're a good artist if you can draw someone and render it as who they are and what it looks like. And I feel just really fortunate that that's from her. And she was the best art teacher because she taught with her love, and she loved that I loved it. And like she gave me her supplies. So a lot of the materials, some of them I use were hers and her sketchbooks, and
Hmm.
some of the stuff I won't even use at all actually. It's like reserved. But it's how I'm close to her, and I
Mhm.
feel like she would so be loving the work that these students are making and that I'm teaching them. I just know it. So
What kind of artwork did she do? Was there like did she do landscapes or portraits, or what was her?
she did landscapes, still lifes. She did portraits. She loved oils.
Hmm.
She loved watercolors. She actually was the one that would tell me that watercolors were like the hardest medium, because it requires a lot of control with water, which can be very hard to control. Like it's all in how much you use and the effects it can have on the pigment. She also loved calligraphy. She loved sketching. She actually, and I say it every day to my students, sketch lightly so you can make changes. Don't draw so hard. So everything that I teach and that I really press on is everything she taught me. But she was very into pencil. She also loved pen and ink though too, which I mean, these are all things I love. So it's very cool to explore this and love it. She didn't really get into the sculpture end of things or ceramics. I've dabbled in that, and I've taught it. And now I also teach photography. But she was more of the traditional, mediums. So
Hmm.
painting and drawing. So,
Well, after she passed away, I think she left you guys some of her paintings, right?
oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. They're lovely. And actually, this is when she was around, like she was living still. I was going through a bunch of stuff that she gave me, like art pads and portfolios. And I was just looking through this stuff, sorting, keeping things that were still in good condition, tossing things that weren't. And I'm going through it, and I pulled out these two beautiful. And I have them. I want to get them reframed. Fashion like illustrations, like two big 18 by 24 drawings, like three women on each one. And it's, I was like, oh my, I felt like I like struck gold, and like she was still living. So I was able to ask her about it. She's like, oh, those, I was in high school. They're not even good. Same stuff I say.
Right,
But
right.
like they're here, and like I teach fashion illustration. So it's just, it's so cool. And I mean, we'll always have that. I know Kate has some pieces. I think Tara took some. I have some, and it's just, it's really nice. Art always lasts forever.
Yeah,
We'll always have it. So
yeah. It's true. I think that's one of the things about art that I enjoy as well, is that you make it and then it's something that's there for people to ponder and look at and sometimes even critique. People love to critique. But it's, it is something that's is interesting to have, and especially when it's a loved one. My grandfather used to do wood carvings. He got into that
oh
like the last 5, 10 years of his life. So
wow.
he would get a block of wood, and then he would get his tools and he would shave them and cut them, and they tended to be birds or religious, figures. And that was his passion. That's what he really loved.
Yeah.
Um, so I
That's
saw,
challenging too. I've taught that wood carving. That's all those tools and like how to gouge
yeah.
out the wood. Like that's an art form.
Oh, he was good. He was really good at it. He was really good at it. And then he would make these beautiful carvings, and then he would find the brightest colors and paint it. And you would lose all of that amazing
Yeah.
wood, but it would be this bright, like, your face thing. And for him, that was, having those bright colors was part of his art. I
Yeah.
like the natural wood look,
Mhm.
or shades of wood, in it if he had stained it. But it was his thing, so whatever made him happy. But
That's
um,
amazing.
but it's nice because some of the stuff that I do, some of the sculpting I do, I get to use his tools. So whenever I'm
Yeah,
using them, I feel like he's there with me, which
absolutely.
is very
Yeah,
nice. Is very
I
nice.
totally get it.
So what made you want to get into teaching? Was it because your grandmother had taught you, or was it that you just felt it was a good? What called you to it, I guess, is the way I want to say it.
Um, it really didn't happen until college, because I remember being a high school art student, and I had a teacher who I loved dearly, and she would come over to me and she'd be like, Megan, what are you gonna do with this? And I remember like saying, what? Like, what do you mean? Like, every good artist in high school thinks they're bad.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, I don't know. I was gonna go. I went to SUNY Cortland, and I went as a freshman as just a childhood education major. So like your grade school teacher, like a third grade teacher, where you teach all the core subjects, and then the kids go off to do the electives. So um, I remember I took an art history class up at Cortland my freshman year. It was art history, modern to today. Like, so it started off with Impressionism and Post Impressionism, and then it to present. And I remember Fragonard's The Swing came up on the projector, and I don't know if you're familiar with it at all.
No.
It's stunning, and it's from the Rococo period, very French bourgeoisie, stiff, like elitist type
Mhm.
painterly work, but it's beautiful. And I knew I could draw, I knew I could paint. I had a fun skill hobby that I would do on the side. But then
Mhm.
I started to really fall in love, like I said, with how artists think and what draws them to to focus on certain things. And I remember analyzing it, and I would take these tests and write all these essays, because in art history it's all writing.
Right.
A lot of art criticism, and you learn how to give constructive criticism, you learn how to have conversations and share views,
Right.
ironic. um, and I would do really well, and my professors really liked it, and I would go meet with them in office hours, and I was just like, I really like this art history stuff. So for a little while I actually thought about going for a PhD at Stony Brook, but then I was like, wait a second, I'd have to learn French, Latin, and Italian because all art is the history of the world, essentially, and all the great artworks are overseas and in other languages. And I was like, what if I taught at a high school level and I could like integrate some of this art history and talk about it? And that's really how it kind of, so I switched my major in college and was like art history, concentration, and then I went to grad school for my art education degree. So it really flourished late college years. I was like, I think I should be an art teacher. I remember thinking that. And I'm so glad I switched. I couldn't imagine teaching first grade like reading lessons, you
Right.
know?
Right. Yeah.
So,
No, I subbed 20 years ago, I guess, about at this point in time, and I hated it.
yeah.
I subbed in the inner city, and then I subbed in suburbs, and it was some of the probably the least happy periods of my life. So
It's
anyone that
a hard
teaches, like,
job.
now, yeah, my heart wasn't in it. I just didn't enjoy it, and you have to really love it. There has
Yeah.
to be something about it that, because I toyed with the idea of maybe being a history teacher or something, since I love history, and I think history is fascinating when you frame it the right way.
Hmm.
But I just, I didn't get any of that. Like, oh, the kids got it, and I feel great, and I really impacted a kid today, and I was like, I just want to go home. I'm like looking at the clock, like I'm back in elementary school. Like it's 2:15. Is it 3:15 yet? I want to get the hell out of here. Then
Yeah.
go home and take a nap for 2 hours because I was so exhausted. So I
Yeah, that's
realized it
not
wasn't a
your
fit.
fit then. That's not
It
your
wasn't a good fit.
job.
No, not at all. So it's good that it calls to you and speaks to you, and So I would gather that you do feel that feeling when you're working with a kid, and you help them come to some realization about artwork or a technique or something new, and there's that moment where you kind of see their mind open up into a new direction, and they start to think about something in a different way.
Yeah, I mean, of course, you have the students that don't want to. I can't teach creativity. I actually just said that today. I
Mm,
can teach you how to shade a tree branch, which is what we're doing in studio. I start a landscape unit. I can teach advanced photo about abstraction, which we're doing right now. And I can teach intro to photography about Photoshop and just tools. But I'm like, I can give you a camera, I could give you amazing equipment, but the best equipment is your pair of eyes and really your mind. You have to have an open mind. And I can't teach creativity. So for students that are hesitant with that, or they're just taking it to take it and satisfy a credit, there's that group of students, and that you're just trying to get them what they need. And
mhm,
then there are the students that have an interest in it. Like I'd want to say like how I was, like they have a skill, but they're not really sure what they want to do with it. And then you have the art students. Um, I find that the hardest working students are not really the art students or the students that are taking it just to satisfy a credit, but the students like me who, a high school teacher can have a tremendous impact on a student who might be undecided. I mean, our teachers, high school teachers, are really one of the first people that notice the talent
yeah.
and really try to like guide a student, like you should really explore this more, like you've got a skill set in music or art or acting or math. I feel like high school teachers starts there. Like, some of my art teacher that said you should teach art. I mean, I was 16 when she said that to me, and I rolled my eyes, probably like the moody high school girl I was. But like, I just, when you see, like, when I sit down and I am working with a student, and I like to do befores and afters. So I like students to draw me what you think a landscape looks like right now. And they're like, is this being graded? And I'm like, just draw what you think a landscape looks like. Draw what a tree looks like. 2 weeks later, they're going to do a real landscape, and they're going to have perspective and proportion and value. And they're going to see, even the students that might not have a talent art, they will progress.
Mhm.
They will have succeeded in doing better. That to me is like the best. I love the before and after.
Yeah.
That's really fun because it's happening in front of you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's cool.
It is. It's very interesting. I mean, I loved art when I was in school. It was one of my few classes I tolerated, and they and I had some really nice art teachers in elementary school and junior high. But it was always kind of like a class you went to get to escape because the other stuff was horrible, and there wasn't any creativity in it, you know.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that was, but then it's true. When I got into high school, I had a teacher, Mrs. Kra, who I think was from Germany. I don't know. And she would walk around the classroom and look at stuff and say, "It's crap, throw it out," you know. And she was very, but she was I remember I did a portrait of a president, and I drew it, and then I went to go paint it. And she's like, "Well, what color are you going to paint it?" I said, "Well, I don't know, flesh tone and brown for his hair and some gray. I don't know, you know." And she was just like, "No, that's ridiculous. Do something creative." And I was like, "Well, what do you want me to do?" And she was like, "I don't know. Pick a color. What's your favorite color?" And I said, "Blue." She said, "Paint it blue. Shades of blue." And then I went and I painted them various shades of blue. And I forgot about it. And I found it when I was clearing out stuff in my parents' house. And I was like, "Oh my God, I forgot about this." And then I remembered Mrs. Craw and her, you know, and then she said to my parents at one point, "So what school does he want to go to?" And they were like, "Well, he wants to go to Harvard, but there's no way he's going to get there with his grades." And she was like, "Well, Harvard, like the art?" Or they were like, "No, he wants to go in for political science." And she was like, "Oh my God, I thought he wanted to go to art class, like go to art school."
Yeah.
And she was like, they were like, "No, he doesn't want to do that." But I do remember her really being like, so even after that, not giving up on trying to get me into art school because I kept taking art classes all throughout high school. I took art class every year, you know. But it really was. There was the high school teacher that kind of like goes in and I think tries to start to steer you into there's a reason why you always enjoyed art classes in the lower grades. You
Yeah.
know, that was your refuge, you know, and I,
Totally. Yeah.
you know, and she then kind of tried to built on that and pushed me into that direction. But she
Yeah.
failed in that sense. But it's all right. Um, so, what I guess like one of my thoughts is so you're helping students, but then you also have your own work. You know, like I'm sure you like to do your own drawing still, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what tends to inspire you? What do you think is something that like, you know, I spoke to one guy who's a writer and a director and an actor, and I said, when you come up with an idea, this guy Joe Kane for a couple podcasts ago, and I said, what how do you get your ideas? And he's like, I literally I walk outside, I look up at the stars, and things just start popping in my head. I usually have like some message I want to try to get out, something I think that means something. What kind of inspires you to do something creative and do some artwork?
Um, I know sometimes it's like I'll see like well sometimes like my ideas will come at night like the long days over work is done because I find that sometimes it's hard for me to do artwork for myself when I'm so busy teaching it because I'm so busy planning and prepping and it's like by the time I'm done I'm like I need a break
Yeah,
but
yeah.
like on breaks or summer or just maybe long weekends like at night I'll be like oh I really want to kind of do what my students are working on right now. I want to try it. Or so like sometimes it's revisiting lessons or concepts that I'm myself teaching. Like I'll have drawn a demo. I'm like, yeah, that's really good. I think I want to like do more of it. Or, I've got an Ivan Earl who was a Disney artist back in the day. Sleeping Beauty. He did all the landscape, all the background artwork for Sleeping Beauty, the
Mm,
50s version. And he's iconic and
yeah.
he pulls from the Renaissance and his work is stunning. And I love Disney conceptual work. So patterns and textures and lines, like I'm looking at it right now and it's like, I feel like drawing stuff like that. Like it just comes, like I don't think I ever do artwork to send a message other than let's look at something that's pleasant. Like I want to keep things positive and inspire others or make someone feel good or wow, like she loves what she does. or she believes in it, you know, and I certainly don't do it for likes or followers or even compliments. I do it because it's like, if I haven't done artwork in a while, I'll hear it within me. Like there'll be this urge to execute something. And like I
Mhm.
have to.
Mhm.
It's almost like shedding skin, you know, it's like I have to. And I'll post it or I'll share it, or I'll send it because it just, I think it might be refreshing in someone's social media feed to see watercolor sunflowers,
Mhm.
you know, or something pleasant to look at. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's, when you're creating art, that is something you're trying to do, is you're trying to inspire, you're trying to give somebody hope, or you're trying to convey something of yourself, a cathartic kind of thing. I had mentioned previously that uh, your sister Kate's a huge Jaws fan.
yeah,
And,
wasn't
Steve,
always.
what was that?
She wasn't always a big Jaws fan.
Yeah. And, but, it's like Steven Spielberg made that movie because he was afraid of sharks and the water,
Yeah,
and then he made,
crazy.
hmm?
That's so crazy. That's cool, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's like, I saw an interview with him where he was like, I wanted to share my dread with everybody else. And, and now all of you get to feel, that, and, and now it doesn't bother me as much, so he kind of like got it out there, and maybe saved some lives. People kind of thought twice sometimes about jumping into a water with,
Mhm.
a certain time, who knows? But yeah, I mean, that is a big part of art, is wanting to kind of, get something out there.
Yeah.
Sometimes just to make someone happy, just to think you're adding some positiveness to the world.
Yeah, and I actually even, that reminds me of a couple years ago. I have it. It's downstairs. I did in ink. I don't like spiders. Um, Kate doesn't like them either. I'm sure Kate
Mhm.
told you, but they're creepy. I mean, they're amazing and fascinating to look at, and their
Mhm.
webs are stunning. But and I'll photograph them, especially in the summer. Like they build those webs like it's, you knock them down, they're up in an hour,
Oh yeah.
bigger and more amazing. But I took pictures of spiders and I painted them, and I don't like them. I'm scared of them, but it was really cool to really study the shapes and then the legs and I'm like, wow, this is really fun to paint and draw, something that I'm afraid of and will stomp on as soon as I see it, or paralyze it with hairspray, which I've done in the past. But it was kind of like therapeutic, I guess, to explore actually drawing those. So,
Yeah.
and then sometimes I follow a lot of artists all over the world on Instagram, and I'll look at their stuff and I'm like, I need to do this. I need to try drawing this to educate
Mhm.
myself or see if I can do it. So
Mhm.
also just to like study more, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it is. It is sometimes studying that thing that you're not crazy about helps you understand it better. It becomes less fear, less
Yeah.
fear inducing.
Yeah.
It helps you not make judgments about it and maybe see it differently. So it is. I think, a really good truth to that. And I think art is a great way of kind of holding up. I mean, anything that I direct, I always like to leave the ending a little ambiguous, even if I write it, because I like the idea that at the end, the audience can kind of say, "Well, I wonder what happened," and maybe fill in the pieces of their own life and what they would like to see happen, and maybe make those changes, in their day to day. Who knows? I don't know. But it's a very interesting concept, art. I think it's very, you have to create something firm, but it's also extremely nebulous. So
Absolutely.
it's kind of this massive contradiction
Yeah.
of things, concepts in the world.
Mhm.
Um, so I am curious too, because you and I have spoken a little bit about it in the past. How do you see doing art in a time that seems to be so hypercritical and divisive, where everybody's offended by something. And I think, we're in a place now. I have had my own challenges in writing a script, having it get script analysis and getting a bunch of like crazy perspectives about how I'm going to offend somebody based on the script. And like, well, this is, this, we don't live in a sanitized world. I know that's what certain people are trying to make happen, but at the end of the day, it's never going to be that way. So what challenges do you see in creating art in today's world where people are ready to jump down your throat with just about anything?
I try to really like the reason why I create art, I try to teach it through that. So, you know, I try to tell students to tap into their interests, things that bring them joy, in their personal life, family, friends, places, seasons, times of year.
Hmm.
Um, I know there are teachers or art teachers too, that have brought heavy topics into the classroom in the art room. And I think that's great for them. But for me personally, my goal is that you learn the fundamentals and that I can get you to draw better and I can get you to paint better and I get you to leave my room with something that you actually really enjoy. And, um, I try to create a space that is just one that is positive and encouraging. And I really tend to stay away from anything that could be not that or could create something that could go down a path that could be difficult to navigate through in the art room. I just think art should bring people together and not divide people, you
Hmm.
know. So I just did a lesson with studio art where I took the big skeleton from one of the science labs, the forensics room, and I said, we're going to draw this skeleton. And then you guys are going to use oil pastels and you're going to use colors that reflect your mood and you're going to show contrast. Like I try to keep things very basic in terms of the fundamentals of art. But it's hard because a lot is going on. So I'm like, should I be integrating some of this stuff like current event stuff in art? Like how would you express or how would you draw a visual representation of this current event? How would you show it in color? What does it look like?
Hmm.
But then it's like I don't think I want to go down that road. um, Maybe it's because I'm uncomfortable with it personally, probably, because for me art should be uplifting and inspiring,
Hmm.
not cause heads to butt.
Yeah.
And I won't enjoy it, you know.
So would you say you're trying to instill um, a sense of belief in themselves as artists and not be so concerned about what someone else is going to say?
Yeah, I think that they should. I mean, I encourage a room where, I'll say to them, well, instead of asking me, what do I think? I'll do these things called turn and talks where students will turn to the person next to them or in front of them. And for 5 minutes, they both talk about the other person's artwork, the successes, what's working, what they should keep going with, and then constructive criticism, because there's a way you can constructively criticize or offer suggestions on how to improve something. But like you said earlier, I feel like the art room is escapism.
Hmm.
They're in social studies, they're in English, they're analyzing books by authors who now apparently might be canceled, and social studies where I don't even want to know what they're talking about in social studies. So, uh, and inside, I feel like art should be a reprieve from all that.
Hmm.
I don't want to get into the current events. Maybe it makes me a weaker teacher. Maybe it makes me not that great of a teacher. But if my students walk into my room excited to be there, can take a deep breath and just get out oil pastels and get dirty with those and talk with their friends and share ideas about, oh, I think you could do this, or and then leave here smiling. That to me is how I handle everything that's going on.
Well, I think, I mean, that sounds like a good approach to me. Current events are, there's no like rule of existence that determines what current events we're supposed to be talking about.
Right.
Current events nowadays in particular are talked about based on what the media thinks is going to make them money. So,
Yeah.
if you were to bring in that um, infected, you know, a virus, so to speak, of what the media is saying is important, um, I don't know if you're doing your students service, doing them, any good that way. I think what you're doing is providing them an opportunity to find a real safe space, not a whatever they're doing now in the colleges, but like an actual safe space inside
Mhm.
where you find your center even when you're in the midst of a storm, and
Yeah.
that's what art always did for me, and that's what creativity does for me now, is it allows me to find a real honest to goodness safe place. Probably safe place is better than safe space.
Mhm.
um, and it helps me refocus and not get pulled into the negativity that's out there, because there's negativity on both sides. There's people that I agree with on certain topics, who sometimes are very negative, and I don't agree with the negative approach. And then there's people who I don't agree with on certain topics who are sometimes positive, and I find that I like talking to them more about certain things.
Yeah.
So how just as a person and an educator, your whole focus is, well, not your whole focus, but a large portion of your day-to-day existence is in educating people and providing them with strategies and structures to cope and learn and develop.
Mhm.
How do you handle this current time, which I'm a history buff? This is one of the most divisive periods in American history, not necessarily in world history, but definitely in this country.
Yeah.
And what tends to happen is what happens in America happens throughout the world. So the world is a little crazy right now. How do you handle, as an educator, working with people who sometimes maybe go off into a very negative realm?
That's actually been kind of a hard thing for me because it took me a while to become an art teacher. Like it took a few years of job searching, and before that I was working in a different fields, in the construction fields, and you're dealing with adults. So when I did the shift to students and kids that are teenagers and about to go to college, what surprised me was seems to be like a lack of coping skills, I thought, and a lot of students have anxiety, a lot, and to a point where it's debilitating for a lot of them. And you know I have trouble connecting with them sometimes because when I was their age, I was not glued to a phone staring at someone else's world that is made to look pretty and amazing, never have a bad day, never taking a picture from a bad angle or point of view.
All right.
And I was out riding my bikes and picking up slates, looking for salamanders and, playing with frogs with my neighbor. And with the exception of students, and there are students that play sports and are active, but they all have a cell phone.
Yeah.
And I really think the cell phone has caused, or not the phone, but all the social media, I really think drives the lack of coping skills because people are seeing other people's life and it looks amazing. And it's all a lie.
Mhm.
It's all glammed up and it's not realistic. And, you know, are these pictures even current, or were they from 2 years ago or a week ago? And so I know, and I'll say, I'm like, guys, why don't you get off the phone? Like, take a break, put it in your bag. And I'll say to them, like, I don't want to see the phones, put them off. I don't want to see a phone on the table. You don't need it. I don't need to see it. Get it off the table. You just need paper and a pencil
Yeah.
and talk to each other. Like some of these kids, the classes are so quiet. I've got my classic rock on, my 90s alternative, sometimes smooth jazz, depending,
Hmm.
trying to like create an environment where I could take that deep breath and I can chat with my friends and create something really great and learn something new and try something different. But the phones, I really think it's just, that is hard to teach around. I mean, that is, I think every teacher is dealing with that because it's a constant distraction. And you will have students that are friends that are sitting at a table tick-tocking,
Mhm.
but you're sitting right next to them. Just talk to them. They're right there. I didn't grow up with that.
Yeah.
I can't relate to that. And I do not envy them. I love my childhood, how I grew up, what I did to play and entertain myself. And it's not like that anymore. And I think that is what drives all these kids with anxiety and coping issues. And, I can't face going into school today. And I'm not even talking about COVID. I'm just like in general. I just, that worries me as an educator because you talk to a student who has the weight, it seems like they have the weight on their shoulders of the world. And I'm like, they don't have bills to pay yet. Like they're
Mhm.
not even in college. They're not in the real world yet.
Yeah.
And one of my best interview questions ever was from a principal who asked me, what would you tell students about the real world? I thought it was it was probably the best question I've ever been asked on an interview for a teaching job.
Mhm.
And I think he asked that of me because I was coming from kind of the real world. I wasn't in this education bubble where I was a teacher forever. I was, an administrator in a construction company.
Yeah.
And my gut response to him was, it's cutthroat. Like it's not going to care how you're feeling at the end of the day.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
have to be ready to push through and persevere and not let any noise get in your way. And that's how I feel today still. And I'll tell that to my students, but I also, be kind to each other and just, don't be so hard on yourself. Like, where does this come from? So
Yeah.
I think social media is just like the worst, it's definitely a bad influence
Well,
on them.
what's really interesting is, this is now, I think this is going to be number 8 in the podcast that I've done. And a lot of the people I've spoken to, either during the podcast or after or before or whatever, they're all kind of saying the same thing, which is that it seems like what a large portion of the contributing reason to why things are as negative as they are is social media, cell phones, and constant ability to get that uh, stimulation.
Hmm.
It's not like when we were kids. Oh, I want to look something up. Well, I'll go to the library tomorrow and go look in an encyclopedia.
Yeah.
Go take a book out on it and read through pages before I can get the information. Things like that. And also, though, the nice thing was, is you have a bad day in school, you at 2:15, 3 o'clock, 3:15, whenever the hell school ended, the bell rang, you left,
Hmm.
and that was it. And then you were home, and you didn't need to think about it for the next 6, 7, 8 hours or 12
Yeah.
hours or whatever it was. And nowadays, it's always with you. It's always following you. It's like,
Hmm.
you never get away from school. You never get away from potential negative interactions. And
Yeah.
I do think it's causing a lot of anxiety. And I think for adults too that live on their cell phone. I mean, I literally take my thing sometimes, I just turn it off. If I'm working on stuff down in the basement, unless I'm listening to music, I try to let me leave the phone on the charger upstairs. I just don't want it around me all the time,
Yeah.
because I feel like what I'm living, my life is disappearing in a phone. It's like,
Yeah. And I've said that to students. I said that today. I'm like, why are you guys like watching someone else's life happen
mhm,
while yours is being spent on that? Like, just put it away. Like,
yeah,
but at the same time, I have my phone, but during my school day, I'm so busy with them. So when I come home and after I'm done with, gym or whatever, like I'll look on it at night. And it's like I feel like, oh my God, I fall victim to it too. So it's this crazy circle. And, it's like that instant gratification that you look for. And I mean, for me, a lot of the, like I said, a lot of people that I follow are a lot of artists. So a lot of it, I'm looking at stuff that's art or, you know, stupid, horrible Bravo TV drama. But like, it's just, it is escapism also. But I do think that it's sad to me that you'll walk into your classroom and everyone is just looking down. They're
Yeah.
kids aren't talking to each other. And as a teacher, I'm like, does anyone have a personality today? Does anyone want to say anything? You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
you're going to have to be able to interact here
Uh-huh.
or up there. And I did hear, and this was last year, I didn't even think of this, but I was walking down the hallway and I walked past a group of kids and I heard a kid say, "Oh my God, I heard she was talking about me in the private message." Like there are private friend messages where they exclude other friends. So God knows I mean, of course they have anxiety. I would hate it if that was how I grew up.
Yeah.
So it's tough. It's
It
tough.
is. I feel like we grew up in like the last sane generation of the 70s, 80s, 90s, where
Mhm.
technology was starting to creep in, but there was still a balance to it. And
Yeah.
I think like I think we've been able, if not everybody in our generation, but in general, I think that we maybe find that balance sometimes. Like I instinctively knew when I was getting too involved in my cell phone.
Hmm.
I'm on Facebook too much, which, Facebook, Twitter, horrible. It's
Oh God, yeah. Yeah.
literally Facebook I do just so I can keep in touch with some people, realize I don't want to keep in touch with other people and just kind of, do that. And Twitter, I just gave up on. I was like, this is a disgusting, disgusting place. Well, I looked at like Twitter and I think I had I don't remember, 6,000 followers or something, which is compared to what other people have is really nothing. And I looked at it, and I was like, I don't know any of these people. I know 10. I know 10 of them. And
And
everyone else, I don't care. Like I don't know them. I don't know anything about, they're really not commenting or liking or engaging on anything I'm posting. So why am I wasting my time with this? And the other thing I'd noticed is you would post something sometimes about, hey, just got interviewed, check out our film. And then we would get a bunch of negative votes or negative reviews.
what is yeah, I know.
And
Terrible.
I just, I said to myself, and then I looked at, the reviews of the film on Amazon Prime. And I'm like, that's the only platform I promoted on Twitter. And that's the platform that got hammered with negative reviews, which is also just some people hate your guts, and Amazon's easy to take, snipes at you with.
Mm.
But then other platforms it's on, I didn't really promote on Twitter, didn't get negative. So I just think Twitter is a negative, horrible place. And I think it fosters the worst in people. And
Yeah.
Facebook, I don't think Facebook's as bad, and Instagram, I think, kind of keeps the political people and the more negative people. They got to actually be creative and find a way to write some, usually misinformed political perspective about something. Like they have to they'd have to write something out, screen grab it, and then put it up. So it takes a couple of steps. Maybe they've thought at some point between step one and step two if they really want to do this. With Twitter, it's just like, let me just the fastest
Retweet.
yeah,
Yeah.
the fastest I can put this thing in my phone and let me get it out there. And Facebook is great for the armchair historians who never read a history book to write paragraphs on your posts or their own paragraphs about current events and things like that. So I
Yeah.
think you have to take it all with that grain of salt. And the thing that I always find most fascinating is with some of these folks, you talk to them off of Facebook, and it's like different personality,
Mm.
totally different person. They just don't even. So it is very interesting, and there is a lot of negativity in the social media, and that's for even us as adults who grew up in a more sane
Yeah.
time. So I can't even, for kids who are just trying to navigate, why am I not popular? Who likes me? Why doesn't he or she like me? And why do they like this one instead? And I mean, then they have to navigate this vitriolic environment. Is
Oh my God. Yeah. this is what it is. You know, you look at people, you hate on them, you criticize, not constructively, the opposite,
Right.
tear down people. And why? Because someone is getting the attention that you're not. It's just so ridiculous. And I think that also comes with maturity and growing up. And, you know, I'm 37, they're 16,
Right.
but
Right.
someone needs to tell them, like, don't talk like that. Don't do that.
Yeah. I mean, I was in no way, I was definitely a hothead. I would say up until I was about 34. So, most of my high school years, I was, I'm happy there wasn't a social media or Facebook or any of that stuff because I'd have to go back and look at stuff that I said and things that I said about people. And, I would have to be reminded of it all the time. And that's something I think is going to be difficult for this group. And maybe that's why there's such a strong cancel culture, is because there's this element of a hyper anxiety about people coming to get you and hold something against you. So everybody's just like, not everybody, but a large or a vocal, I should say, a vocal component of our society is kind of the cancel culture warriors who are just like in this constant state of anxiety of like everything's offensive. So we got to cancel everything. And, I saw this really funny video of this guy who's also a redhead. So he's one of my kin. He's one of my people. So we got to stick together. But he does these things, and he said something about how he was mocking cancel culture people. I'll probably put a link in the video at this point. But he said he was like playing a cancel culture person. He's like, we've canceled everything. And he's just in a white room. And then he's like, as he's speaking, like the guy that there's a cancel culture guy with a clipboard next to like off camera who says to him, no, we don't use that word anymore. That was deemed offensive to like the mosquito. And he was like, oh, but I can't use that. And then at one point, like he was in danger of being canceled, and he was like the head cancel culture guy. And I think
Where does it end,
hmm?
Where does it end? Like, where
Well,
do we have this?
I think at some point it eats its own tail. I've been using the Frankenstein monster analogy for a while. I read Frankenstein when I was a kid in school, and the thing that stood out to me was Dr. Frankenstein created the Frankenstein monster based on his own fears and drives and ambitions and wishing to not die and all these other things, right? So he put all those things into this creation, and then at the end, the monster kills him, I believe, if I'm remembering the story correctly. Um, but the monster is becomes this mindless thing that doesn't know how to interact in the world. And I really feel that's kind of what cancel culture and the social justice warrior mindset could possibly turn into in time, is that it ends up, its own creation attacks itself, which is what happened with Harvey Weinstein. Harvey Weinstein supported a lot of these cancel culture people and the social justice warrior mindset for years and contributed. And then it came after him, with the hashtag Me Too. And that's happening to a lot of people. So I don't know. It's got to stop at some point, because we would be left at some point with total fascism and a total inability to express a thought, that we basically would be China. So, and YouTube will now block this in China. So, but it's true though. It's really something that there needs to be an end at some point.
I think also, I also post all that for art on social media because my social media is inundated with just these reposted TikToks and these political posts, and it's overwhelming. So I post stuff with art because I feel like there's got to be people on my Instagram that are tired of being lectured on what is right and wrong and what is evil and corrupt. And I'm just so tired of it. Like like these Instagram stories where people repost these political things, and like, okay, if I disagree or if I think differently, now I'm feeling bad on my own Instagram because someone I'm following is recycling someone else's posts over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, my Instagram needs to be awesome artwork my students create, awesome artwork I create, cute puppy dog posts. Just I can't do it. I don't have the energy anymore to like look at this stuff. It's
Yeah.
just it's overwhelming. So, it gets old, I think, really quick. Like you said, I think people are just gonna get tired of it. Like, okay, I forgot you're on a pedestal. You know what's good for everyone. Okay, whatever.
Yeah,
Next.
I think there's a lot of self-hate from a lot of those people. And I had posted something, we were talking a little bit about it before, where I was hoping that a certain political person was not going to die, and apparently that was considered bad. So I wanted death and destruction to him or her and his or her family. So, and then someone who was really adamant, who I knew a bit about her past and her family history through a mutual friend. I knew her through work. Um, the amount of hatred coming out of her um, was disconcerting. And it made me realize that, I have no problem being friends. Most of the people that I'm friends with have different views.
Mhm.
I never thought that was a bad thing. I actually like different views. And when we founded a film company, um, I wanted people with different views. The only thing was I wanted people who were willing to work together and have different views, because I thought that would make things more interesting. I don't like echo chambers. I never have.
Mhm.
Um, but I also don't like evil, and I don't like dark, dark negativity where you want the destruction of another human being. And I don't care who that is. I don't care if that's Joe Biden. I don't care if that's Donald Trump. I don't care if that's Nancy Pelosi or Kevin McCarthy or whomever. I
Mhm.
don't want their absolute total destruction as human beings.
Right.
And I just can't back anybody that does. It bothers me. So, and I do believe the majority of people in this world think that way and think the way you do. I
Mhm.
just think it's a vocal group of lunatics who have somehow gotten the megaphone. The inmates have broken out of the asylum. They have the megaphone, they got the PA system, they've never had it before, and they're just living it up.
Yeah.
And I think, the sane people are trying to figure out, all right, listen, we got to get this thing back, but we can't start shooting them all with rubber bullets. It's almost like when the negotiators are trying to wait out a hostage situation. And I kind of feel like our society is being held hostage by these crazy people because we're trying to find a compassionate and logical way of reeling them in. And it's going to be interesting to see how that's done. I don't know. I have predictions and thoughts on it. I've shared some of them, but I do think it is the step of the educators to provide the positive, uh, non-political, non. The thing I loved about my teachers in grade school, I didn't know who the hell any of them voted for.
Oh yeah, I don't speak about any of that. Like I said, my art room is escape land,
Yeah,
space land, like legit safe space. And it's just I'll talk to you about Raphael or Michelangelo or Van Gogh, but
yeah.
that's you know.
No, I had a teacher. I was election of '84. I drew a picture of Ronald Reagan standing at a podium, and everyone loved Reagan at that time. And then I said to the teacher, I figured I probably should draw a picture of Mondale to be fair, even though I don't think anyone's going to vote for him. And I found out years later she was a Democrat and she voted for Mondale. But I never knew that because in that moment she said, "Well, that's nice of you to do."
I don't think that would happen now.
No, it was a very didn't give a personal view, was professional, and you know didn't try to influence me one way or the other. Then as I got older, and then once I got to college, forget about it. It was just
Oh
Looney
yeah,
Tunes.
that
Um,
that's a transition for sure. So
yeah, Yeah, and I actually got a lesser grade because I didn't agree with the teacher.
That's
And then
happened to me.
yeah,
That's happened to me.
and I
Yeah.
brought it to the dean, and didn't matter.
I was experiencing, I think, personal cancel culture back in college, and that, it's unfortunate, but I think it makes you wiser because you start to pay attention to your audience, and
Mhm.
you want, at the end of the day, you want to protect yourself. Like, what is in my best interest? What will keep me sane? What will protect me and, my world and my friendships, my family, my job. So
Yeah.
you start to know your audience. You start to pay attention to it more. So,
Yeah. And I think, as a teacher, you just keep doing what you're doing, obviously, which is you provide that safe place, that good environment for people to still be able to think critically, which is, I think, drastically reduced nowadays. And I've always felt creativity is a saving grace. It's a really great, if you have that gift, use it, whatever it may be. And creativity is so many different things. It can be repairing an engine. That's something I have no ability to do, but you have to creatively be able to figure out how this whole thing works.
yeah,
So,
I have no idea how that goes.
no, I don't either. I
I
don't
can draw the engine, but I can't put it together. So,
No, no, but that's a great to be able to take something apart. And my father has this great story about how when he was like 8, he took apart his parents' lawnmower simply because he wanted to, and then he put it back together.
wow.
And they were like, flipping out at first because he had the lawnmower apart on the lawn, but then he put it all back together. He creatively figured it out, and he made it happen. So, but well, I want to thank you for being on today. It
Thank
was
you.
it
Thanks
was
for having me.
well, it was my pleasure. It was nice to have you on and have a different perspective. I wanted all these podcasts to have a different outlook, always be focused somehow on creativity, but just kind of see different people's experiences and what they're seeing about the world, and
Mhm.
you know, how certain things are being influenced in our current society. So yeah, so thank you very much,
Awesome.
and I'll be talking to you soon.
Yeah, and if you need another show, let me know.
I will. I will. I definitely will.
All right. Thank you so much, Dave.
My pleasure.
All right.
All right, bye.